Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. It was my birthday a couple of days ago on the 25th, so I'm sort of settling down to reality, back to work, because I've been out and about, just enjoying my birthday. But love to each and every one of you, and I hope you're going to have a drink, something special, because I'd love to just have a toast with you, wherever you are. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, it had been raining cats and dogs in Seattle. The heavens had opened. The tears of the earth could not restrain their grievous melancholia. For when she unlinquished her weary load upon us, we knew that the tears were unlikely to stop for quite some time. But when they did, it was miraculous, as the frolicsome sun would pop up through the clouds and shine upon us moments later, as if nothing had happened at all. The sorrowful tears, long since forgotten. The only evidence of the deluge would be observed in the glistening leaves of the crisp verdant vegetation, wiped clean of all their dust, and the soft earth that had sucked up the moisture, harnessing it as a reservoir of invaluable nutrients for plant growth. That was Seattle for you. She wore her heart on her sleeve, so you could experience 4 seasons in a day, from rain, sun, wind to cold, like the temperamental moods of a highly emotional, sentimental woman, who took everything personally and could get quite upset at the drop of a hat. Let's just say when Seattle was mad, she could lash out at you with biting weather, feisty winds, freezing conditions, or bouts of uncomfortable heat. One thing about her, she kept you on your toes. You never knew what you were expecting, for there is no day in Seattle that is completely predictable. Believe me, I should know. I've lived here for 25 years of my life. Growing up, I soon learnt to never rely on the bumptious weather forecasters on television, who rather fancied themselves as some kind of psychic prognosticator that knew exactly what the day would hold for you. They would smile audaciously into the camera, standing before a map of Seattle, pointing out all the wind currents, the pockets of air or rain for you that were to be expected that day. It was like they wore this smug, pompous, know-it-all expression on their faces, which would heartily annoy me. I soon learnt to never rely on them, or trust a single word they would say, for they knew not the character of Seattle's vacillating moods. They underestimated just quite how temperamentally capricious she was. I remember 5 years back, before I got my current job, where I began to work as an assistant manager for the owner of an illustrious avant-garde restaurant. On the day I was due for that interview with the restaurant owner, I foolishly, rather injudiciously, and definitely against my own better judgment and common sense, surrendered my trust to the weather forecaster, who was smiling back at me on the television, with a very convincing swagger to her gait. I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt just this once, but never, never again. I think it was on this occasion I wanted to believe with all my heart that what she was saying was the absolute truth, not clouded by my own personal doubts. I was pinning my hopes like a note to a reminder board on what I really was desirous to believe, as it graciously accommodated and moulded itself favourably to what I was gunning for, a perfect sunny day, without even a faint peppering of rain, so that my day was spread out before me conspicuously like a map of Seattle on a kitchen table, without any unexpected bumps on the road. I perceived just for once it would be so much easier to rely on this weather girl than trust my own natural instincts. Nothing could go wrong that day, please no. It just couldn't. Things today had to flow seamlessly. I was determined to look smart for my interview and make a positive impression on my prospective employer, as I had my beady eye on this job, like a vulture on a decaying carcass. I wanted it more than anything in the world. Furthermore, down the line it would serve my interests very well, having a name like an aspiring restaurant like this, bobbing its proud head amidst the details of my curriculum vitae, serving to impress potential employees, while surreptitiously opening doors of opportunity for me in the future, where jobs would probably fall into my lap like golden bird droppings from heaven. This restaurant whereupon I was applying for a job was not just any random restaurant. Indeed, there was not a pedestrian, mediocre, bland thing about it that could even be remotely entertained in your mind. If you were to dine there, that is. The word nondescript would never even fleetingly enter your vocabulary. Instead, you would use adjectives like sensational, stunning, exemplary, cutting edge, revolutionary, inspirational, and outstanding. This was a place getting raving reviews from food writers all over Seattle. One well-known food writer wrote, "Food like this is as light as a cool breeze, as delicious as a golden sunset. You are unlikely to forget it. Indeed, my food experience at this restaurant, with a subtle orchestra of flavours from sweet to tart to light and fluffy, will be indelibly imprinted on my memory. Let's just say the cheese soufflé here that I ordered for my hors d'oeuvres must have been on the menu in heaven. It was light and as fluffy as a floating white cloud, and is still melting in my mouth now even long after the event, as just recalling that taste caused me to salivate like a hungry dog. I recommend the food here, but one morning you'll be coming back again and again, and let's just say your deep pockets will become significantly lighter." My mother told me once that booking a table at this restaurant was never easy. It was always booked up, sometimes even weeks in advance. I do know the head chef was from Paris, and his culinary influences on the cuisine titillated the refined palate of the restaurant's cutting-edge cuisine, as he had a natural flair with food and an innovative style that was uniquely his own. My mother had been there for dinner once with my father, on a birthday celebration, and had said that the food presented to her on their rectangular plates looked like paintings, they were so beautiful. You almost felt like a reckless child throwing a pile of old paint over a masterpiece, as it was agonizing to tear this great work of art apart with your fork. But she said it was even more explosively delicious in the mouth. When I told my mother I was applying for this job, she was terribly pleased, knowing full well working for a restaurant like this would certainly boost my career prospects. "You'll get it, dear. The job, I mean," she'd said positively, with so much conviction. "Who in their right mind would possibly refuse you?" My mother always believed I was her shining star. But out there in the big world, one little star can so easily be shrouded and overshadowed by a billion more. I knew it was easy to be overlooked. Besides, if the truth be told, I never believed I was a star. I didn't have the confidence or self-assurance I admired in so many. In truth, I did possess wavering doubts. That relentless negative voice in my mind that would whisper to me, "You'll never be good enough." I'm sure we've all experienced self-doubt from time to time. But I often had this awful feeling that I was a fraud, that one day I'd be found out, and people would say to me, "I knew it all along. You were never a star. You were just posing as one." My best friend Julia Clark, now she rarely was a bright shining star, if ever I did see one. If she was a star in the night sky, she would be one that you would fail to miss. I hasten to say her confidence was always through the roof. I asked her once, "Julia, do you ever doubt yourself?" And she told me, "Never. The moment I hear a scathing voice in my mind trying to undermine me, I tell it to bog off, in no uncertain terms, and it always does. Negative thoughts are like unwelcome guests that need to be evicted forthwith. Don't waste your time entertaining them. They're not your friends." I wish I could do that, but my confidence is more akin to a swaggering drunk, rather rocky and tumultuous, but the less said about that, the better. As I studied the weather forecaster with a mug of piping hot coffee in my hands that morning, which is a prerequisite in my daily routines, I always have to start the day with a coffee. We are possibly the coffee snobs of the Northern Hemisphere here in Seattle, without doubt, and we fancy ourselves as the coffee connoisseurs of North America. If you're from our part of the world, you'll probably choose avant-garde coffee varieties, as opposed to straightforward plainer coffee. I'm watching the weather reporter as she confidently stares into the camera, with a bright sunny smile on her face, complemented by the short-sleeved bright yellow dress she's wearing, that makes you think of tropical beaches and warm sunny weather. "Folks, the great news is you can throw out your umbrellas today. Forget all about them. This is going to be a day of fabulous sunshine, folks, without a hint of rain in the air. So get out your barbecues, sunbathe outside your swimming pools, bring out those juicy watermelon slices." I believed her. Can you believe it? I actually believed her. More fool me. At the time, I lived in an affluent green leafy neighbourhood in Seattle with my two devoted, fun-loving parents. I could have moved out of the house a couple of years prior, but my mother absolutely adored me. She didn't want to let go of those apron strings. I was her only remaining much-beloved chicklet left in the nest. My 2 brothers had long since left home. Peter had moved to Houston in Texas, while my younger brother Ernest was living in Alaska with his wife and family. I was the last remaining fledgling. I knew it would quite literally break my mother's heart if I followed in their footsteps and left home. My mother all her life had only ever yearned to be a mother. That was what she lived and breathed for. Nothing else, nothing more. For her, being a mother had been her aspiration in life since she was a little girl. But she had never envisaged what came after that in the latter years of her life, when her chicklets abandoned their nests and flew away to raise families of their own. I don't think she'd given the matter a moment's thought, or entertained the daunting prospects of losing her family, until it happened, and my brothers left home one after the other. The reality that her chicklets no longer needed her unwavering attention hit her like a brick to the head, causing her much melancholia. Indeed, when my brother left home, my mother became like a grieving widow who had lost her husband and was experiencing a tragic death in the family. Fortunately, with the persuasive help of video chats, she soon began to regain her footing on the rickety, rather unstable ladder of her life. I think knowing that her kids were still around and loved her very much, although they weren't dwelling under her roof, brought her a sobering comfort. But at least she still had me, which gave her maternal role a purpose. I gather there's a name for it, empty nest syndrome, but it's a subject that is so often brushed under the carpet, never discussed. I'm not actually sure why, as I am absolutely certain my mother is not the only mother in the world to feel a dreadful, overwhelming sense of loss when her kids finally leave home. Needless to say, I knew if I left home, it would be hard for her to find her feet again, as family was everything to her. She lived and breathed family. It was her life. She would take a bullet for all of her kids in a heartbeat. I was her very best friend in the entire world, as indeed she was mine. We did so many things together, visited nail salons, beauty parlours, enjoyed lunches, movies, shows, matinees, picnics and long walks in the countryside, and so much more. If I left home, it would be like having the stuffing knocked out of her sails. My mother was not as resilient as most. She took things personally and hurt easily. So adaptation to my departing the nest would never come easily to her. Even I dreaded the day that I'd have to break her heart. Sometimes thoughts of my leaving home loomed over me like a dark, oppressive shadow that was oozing guilt, like the butter dribbling off a hot muffin. Even my father had clandestinely taken me to one side and said, "Fallon, I know you want your independence, dear, and believe me, I do understand that, and how young people these days are itching to leave their homes and embrace pastures new. But I would be exceedingly grateful if you stayed at home as long as you possibly can. I hope it's not too big an ask. It really would make your mother terribly happy. I don't know what she will do when you leave home. I dread to think. I'm quite certain she'll fall apart." I could see the worry etched in his grey eyes, and the beads of perspiration that dappled his forehead, as he looked at me so intensely, like I'd never seen him look before. Almost as if he was expecting me to burst out, "But Dad, I'm leaving!" But I didn't. Instead, I told him I would stay here as long as possible, that I loved living with the both of them, which was absolutely true. I'll never forget the way the turbulent, tumultuous expression on my father's face washed over with relief, like a depressingly overcast day suddenly becoming sunny and bright. He threw his arms around me, gave me a huge, generous hug. "You have no idea how happy that makes me, Fallon. You're a trooper, a real treasure." In truth, I was exceedingly contented to stay with my parents, living under their roof as long as possible, not only because I loved my parents to death, but it was an awful inconvenience for me to have to move out. I mean, why bother? Such a move would be expensive. I'd have to worry about food, shopping, cooking, laundry, cleaning, paying rent, when not only could I stay at home free of charge, which was a big deal for me, but everything was done for me. It was like staying at a 5-star hotel in luxurious conditions without having to worry about a thing or lift a finger. The money I was earning was only piling up in my bank account very nicely, thank you so very much, and it brought me a great source of pleasure seeing the figures grow exponentially. So many of my friends were renting apartments, they were bleeding their bank accounts dry, whiling away invaluable hours hanging around in pedestrian drab laundrettes, while the only source of entertainment for them, aside from their cell phones of course, was watching their laundry rattle and whirl around a hefty, cumbersome-looking machine, living on a metallic, rather insipid diet of silvery coins. It's got to be as bad as watching paint dry, or queuing behind a long line of people in a supermarket to buy your groceries. I was not naively ignorant, but shrewdly discerning. I certainly knew I had it good living with my parents, especially as they lived in a gorgeous classic building that oozed charm and possessed a perfect symmetry. It was easy on the eye. My mother had designed the house herself, with the inspirational help of a high-profile Seattle architect who despised modern architecture with a passion, describing it as the most bland, uninspiring way to live, where character and charm had been flung out of the window like a pair of bedraggled curtains. I hasten to say my mother had wholeheartedly agreed with him. The crisp white two-story mansion stood among many houses in the Seattle street, proud, tall, imposing, regal, with a confidence that was abundantly clear. It was nestled bang in the middle of our front yard, further away from the street, that was illustriously lined with honey locust trees. This was our home, generously dappled with the understated, elegant, refined impressions of Georgian architecture at its finest. On the inside, our open-plan living quarters were luxuriously complemented by high ornate ceilings, stunning dangling chandeliers, with glass crystals that caught the light, bounced rainbows over the walls. All the generous-sized living rooms seemed to fold into each other seamlessly, like the tributaries of a river. Needless to say, my mother needed no help from an interior designer, for she had a phenomenal flair all of her own. She refurbished our abode with sumptuous furnishings, sometimes finding unique pieces at antiques fairs or garage sales. She successfully engaged simplicity with sophistication, enhanced by a dash of individuality, to create a cosy, homely, stylish dwelling for us that had demanded attention from some of Seattle's top interior designers who had heard of my mother's natural talent at bringing things together with such je ne sais quoi, an enviable, effortless ease, I think. What many of my mother's admirers found hard to fathom was she boasted no formal training behind her. She was a natural, unassuming talent. Consequently, many ambitious designers personally visited her to seek inspirational ideas. I couldn't help thinking that this was a path she should pursue one day, when I did finally leave home. I clandestinely planned to encourage her to make such a choice, as maybe her passion for creativity would soften the blow of my leaving the nest. Let me go back to the day when I foolhardily believed the faint ramblings of a weather reporter who had promised all of us who lived in Seattle that we would be spending the day lounging around the swimming pool. Maybe I fell for her promise, as put simply, I wanted to believe it. If someone is pressing a narrative that accommodates your best wishes, suits your convenient agenda, sometimes you want to cling to it for dear life, as you want it so badly to be true, like if the news reports are pushing your favourite football team and declaring it the likely winner. Of course you're going to want it to be true, even if deep down in your guts there's a vacillating quiver within you, a stirring internal knowing that the stats might just be horribly wrong. And although you want to believe your football team will win, underneath it all you just know it won't. I'm willing to wager a bet that this has happened to you. I remember ambling over to my wardrobe to decide what I was going to wear to this interview. I was applying for an assistant restaurant manager's position that paid exceedingly well, as the restaurant was so upmarket, so I needed to look good, smart, respectable. Soon I found the perfect clothes for the occasion. I settled on a pair of black trouser pants, as you can never go wrong with black, which I decided would be elegant, complemented with a crisp white cotton top, a long tailored grey cotton jacket that was slightly nipped in around the waist, but fell below the knees. The look would be complemented with a no-nonsense string of pearls around my neck that was understated yet elegant. I dipped my feet into a comfortable pair of black court shoes with low heels, as I felt sandals weren't appropriate for an interview, as they suggested an indifference to appearing professional. I didn't want to give off a nonchalant, casual vibe. I needed to be taken seriously, to appear like a person upon whom no detail was left unchecked. I then studied my reflection in the mirror more studiously than usual, trying to imagine what a potential employer would think when he looked at me, Would he be impressed? Would he take one look at me and run a mile? My mother used to talk to me a lot about curb appeal. When it comes to houses, she would say that usually a person had subconsciously decided whether they wanted to buy the house they were viewing within the first few seconds of looking at it. I was sure it was exactly the same for people. It would seem it was important that on the first glance you made a significant impression. Did I make a good enough impression on the first glance? Probably not, I decided. I wasn't completely sure. I couldn't help thinking without my makeup on, I looked a tad too young. But a little makeup would fix the problem for me. A touch of a mascara wand, a blush of lipstick on the lips, and your age could literally go up a notch or two, as if by the wave of a magic wand. I was so grateful for makeup, as looking older would help in acquiring this job for me. And believe me, I wanted this job. It was conveniently close to home, an incredible in-demand restaurant with a phenomenal reputation, of which the details I have already shared with you. "Don't you look great, sweetheart?" said my mother, ambling into my bedroom and giving me an approving look. If my mother thought I looked good, I had nothing to worry about. She was an exemplary judge. "Do I have curb appeal, Mum?" I asked, giving her a little twirl. "Do I look like someone you'd want to employ as an assistant manager to a posh restaurant?" My mother takes a step backwards to examine me more critically. "I'm going to cast aside my maternal prejudices and try and pretend I don't know you from Adam, that I'm not completely biased, tarnished by a mother's brush of favouritism. Let's see." She closes her eyes tightly and opens them wide again, while her eyes sweep over me. She pauses for a moment. "You look smart, well presented, but there is a problem. That actually is ruining your look. You look way too serious. A smile on your face would be satisfactorily engaging. You mustn't forget to smile, sweetheart. No one wants to hire a person with a boot face." "But I don't have a boot face," I protested. My mother shifts uncomfortably on her feet. "Sometimes, darling, when you're very serious, you can have a stroppy look on your face." "Are you kidding me? I never knew that." "Does this look better?" I ask. I pull my lips upwards like an elastic band on my face, and my mother pipes, "No, no, that's far too insincere. You look like a Cheshire cat smiling like that. Indeed, it looks positively ridiculous, way over the top. Your face is now all one big smile. It also looks fake." My mother pipes, "No, no, that's far too insincere. You look like a Cheshire cat, grinning from ear to ear, showing all your gums like that. Indeed, it looks positively ridiculous, way over the top. You never normally smile like that. Your face is just one big smile now. It looks put on, it looks fake and false. No, you've got to smile as though you mean it, as if you're genuinely happy. People can always tell an insincere smile from a plastered-on one every single time. I tell you what, when you meet your potential employer, think of something that you find terribly funny, something that makes you naturally laugh. Then you will naturally smile. Try that. Humour me. Let's see if it works. Maybe you can think of a joke that someone told you recently. If you smile, it'll almost certainly be sincere then." I oblige my mother, as I think of 2 jokes my friend told me recently that spring to mind. "Why are there gates around cemeteries? People are dying to get in. And why did the golfer bring 2 pairs of pants to the golf course? In case he got a hole-in-one." I laugh. It seems to have done the trick. My mother claps her hands to applaud me. "Oh, so much better. Another thing I might suggest," she says, pulling my long brown hair away from my face, as if experimenting with a range of hairstyles. "I wouldn't wear your hair down if I were you, especially in a restaurant where food is involved. It's not professional nor hygienic. It's too informal like that. I'd pull it away from my face in a ponytail or a bun if I were you." My mother examines me one more time, after I finally pulled my long brown hair away from my face in a ponytail. She's deciding I'll do very well indeed. "Do you need a lift up the road?" she asks me. "It's no trouble at all, really." "The restaurant is a couple of blocks away," I say. "I think I can actually walk there, Mum. And the weather forecaster says it's sunny all day today." My mother looks doubtful. She shrugs her shoulders as she surrenders to my proclamation with a measure of uncertainty. "If you say so, dear. But I, for one, have never trusted those weather forecasts a day in my life. When have they ever been right? You might be wise to take an umbrella or a jacket along with you, just in case. You never know. Just to be on the safe side, that's all. I mean, you don't want to get caught in a torrential downpour, do you? Thanks for the offer of a lift, Mum, but I think I'd prefer to walk. The walk will help me gain some confidence on the way. I'll practice what I'm going to say at the interview. It kind of helps me to become grounded after a brisk walk. Are you nervous about the interview? My mother asks me, looking at me through earnest, rather worried eyes. My mother always wants to fix my problems. Well, in a way I am. I'm not good at meeting strangers, I explain. You know this. I'm easily intimidated. I mean, what if I stagger on my words as I'm nervous? I don't want to come across as self-effacing or timorous. You need someone confident and chatty in a restaurant, not a retiring tortoise that shrinks into its shell at the first sign of trouble. That's easily remedied, said my mother. When you're being interviewed, imagine the interviewer naked. Then you won't feel so threatened. I promise you it works every time. I always used to do that when I was younger. Are you being serious, I ask? Do I look like I'm joking? My mother gives me a big, affectionate and warm hug. She smells beautiful, that musky, familiar, sexy scent from Yves Saint Laurent that I know so well. Opium. My mother always wears it. It's her signature fragrance. She's worn it all her life. It clings to her clothes and even to our house. I love it as it reminds me of her. My mother's an elegant woman, and looks like she belongs on the Champs-Élysées in France, strolling down the street on a pleasant summer's morning, nibbling the end of a baguette that she's purchased at the bakery, of which in Paris there are hundreds, with these huge glass windows facing the streets, boasting the most delicately detailed pâtisseries that frankly look too beautiful to eat. My mother was born and raised in California, but she did actually live in Paris for about 10 years of her life before she met my dad, so she's fluent in French, and the culture has brushed over her life a tad. She possesses that understated elegance in everything she wears. It doesn't matter if it's casual or smart. My mother always looks chic, come rain or shine. It's like the decor in our house. She just knows how to throw things together to look $1 million. My mother's in her early 50s, with not a straggling grey hair in sight to betray her advancing years. But then I know a few of her secrets. One of them is a phenomenal gay hairdresser in downtown Seattle, where the women flock in their droves for the privilege of having their hair done by Anton Fontaine. I can see why. That hairdresser is a legend. My mother's hair is gorgeous. An abundance of rich layers of hazel brown caress her face in wistful soft highlights, rather reminding me of Audrey Hepburn. Right, I'm going, I tell her. She gives me a warm, effusive hug, wishing me well, like a devoted mother with doe eyes that stares lovingly over her fawn. Her eyes also remain pinned on me from the lower sash windows of our home as she watches me trudge down the front sandstone steps outside our front door, underneath the steep awning of our little porch. I trot down the sandstone pathway, bordered on either side by sumptuous verdant, perfectly mown grass, scattered with the occasional tree, pristinely manicured hedges, and beds ablaze with colourful perennials. I wave to my mother. She stands there in her short-sleeved emerald green dress and waves back at me, a bright smile on her face, her fingers pointed in a thumbs-up position. Obviously she's wishing me good luck. I smiled to myself. My mother is my very best cheerleader, always has been, throughout my life. She's been my greatest encourager, with a blind, unwavering faith in me that I almost certainly lack in myself. If I had the faith she had in me, I could probably conquer the world. But sadly my belief in myself is soiled and tarnished by self-doubt on most occasions. When I'm very low and feeling down and despondent, which does happen from time to time, thankfully not too often, I have been inclined to listen to those judgmental voices inside me that fail to see anything good in me at all. We always need someone in our lives who fights our corner for us, do we not? And my mother is that invaluable person in mine. I earnestly make my way to the restaurant for my interview, focusing attentively on the perfect lines that could clinch the deal for me, rather like memorizing my script for a play. I really want this job. I'm excellent with people. I'm very sharp and attentive. Nothing gets past my beady eye. I'm like a bird of prey. I stop for a moment to consider that last comment. That doesn't sound too good, does it? If I say I'm like a bird of prey, it might make me come across as a garrulous, gossiping busybody who's snooping into everybody's business, and nobody likes that. The kind of person who knows who's cheating on who, and what brand of washing powder people are using. Perhaps I should say, I'm very attentive to detail. I'll even notice if a napkin isn't folded up right. Yip, that does sound a whole lot better. You can trust me. I'm very reliable and honest. I'd never dream of dipping my hands in the till. No, I can't say that either. The owner might think that I'm referring to such a matter precisely because I'm untrustworthy, as if that is exactly what I would do in a heartbeat once his back was turned, since I'm drawing attention to the issue in the first place. Instead, I should say, I'm steadfastly reliable, honest and forthright. Yes, that does sound a lot better. What if he actually asks me why I want this job in his restaurant? What will I say then? What do I say? Your restaurant is conveniently located close to where I live. I'm passionate about food. Your restaurant has an outstanding reputation due to its fine dining and illustrious chef. And I love working with people. That's going to have to do, I decide. I need to keep the balance right. I don't want to appear overly keen. That might make me seem desperate, and desperation is never a good look. The weather is shining down on me. Shafts of sunshine filter magnanimously through the cobalt blue sky. As I amble down the flagstone blocks of the pavement, past beautiful houses on either side of our street. It's only when I'm a street away from the restaurant that the temperamental mood of Seattle's weather shifts and is willfully changed. The weather is having a tantrum. Before I know it, the blue cheeks of her pretty arresting face have now darkened. Then thundering through the clouds, the rain beats down so hard. There's no escape for me, nowhere to run or hide, especially since I'm running late for the interview. I'm veering on 5 minutes late, which doesn't make a good impression. So by the time I actually get to the restaurant door, I'm a very sorry sight indeed. My hair is hanging in limp rags around my face, the buoyancy of my hairstyle now as flat as a pancake. My clothes clinging to me in wet rags. I look like the quintessential homeless bag lady that slept overnight in one of Seattle's less affluent neighbourhoods. The rain unrelentlessly pounds down on the pavements. People scuttle along sidewalks looking for cover. Many dash into nearby shops to wait out the rain, while others, far more sensible than myself, never trusted the guileful female weather forecaster in the first place with her provocatively sweet, seductive smile that could make butter melt. Nor did they fall victim to her disarming, persuasive promises that the weather would remain sunny all day. They were far more wizened. It's her fault, I decide, that I look like something the cat dragged in from the dumpster in the backyard, that is so bedraggled you can't distinguish it from a mouse or a bird. If I'd been savvy enough and brought my umbrella along with me for the voyage, I'd look halfway human, respectable, decent even. All my efforts to look good, the trouble I'd gone to in preparing my wardrobe this morning for this all-important interview, have gone up in clouds of white smoke. And based on the way I look now, I'm sure it wouldn't really matter if I rocked up for my interview with a bag over my head, and I'm not joking about that. But I will admit I feel deflated and defeated, as if the weather has vindictively conspired against me this morning. It feels personal. In a trice I get fleeting images in my mind of the weather girl letting out a witch-like cackling laughter and saying, "I got you! I knew I would get you!" I'm mortified and flung between a rock and a hard place, pondering over the implications of not turning up for this interview at all. I feel if I missed my first interview, it wouldn't look good, nor would it curry any favour with my getting this job. As I silently curse the weather forecaster under my breath, I reluctantly open the restaurant door, entering the lavishly appointed reception area, very self-conscious of what a sorry sight I look indeed. But I think if I didn't turn up for this interview, it would be a fate significantly worse for me, rather than turning up looking like this, as it would blight my reputation with an unsightly hint of unreliability. I can feel I look dreadful. This is affirmed by the annoying immaculate woman seated behind the reception desk, who looks as if her perfect hairstyle is glued to her head, held hostage to the demands of a no-nonsense powerful fixative, so that not one strand of her hair dare escape. In truth, it's almost as if her makeup has been lacquered to her face as well, with a meticulous precision. I think she's like me. She must be in her early 20s, with long blonde hair tied back in a neat, sophisticated chignon. She's wearing a pink-textured fabric outfit that possibly feels like carpet under the fingers. It's very elegant. Oh no, this is all I need. She's looking at me with an expression of unbridled horror on her face that is not easily concealed. Her judgmental blue eyes flounce up and down my body, as if trying to make sense of me, as if I'm something that the cat dragged in. I can read her thoughts like a book. Where in God's name did she come from? The dumpster in the back, perhaps, where she was getting personally acquainted with the restaurant leftovers. The young woman's expression remains static. Her eyes linger over my grey jacket, where its hems are dripping water that is pooling onto the pristine, luxurious designer-patterned carpet. I can almost hear the sound of disapproval in her head. I didn't have an umbrella, I say quickly. I got caught in the rain. You didn't have an umbrella with you, she says scathingly, as if she's really saying, where have you lived all your life? This is Seattle. It rains here. Everybody's prepared. No, I didn't. The woman bites the inside of her cheeks. I can tell she's desperate to say something derogatory, but refrains from doing so. You want to book a table? She asks me, opening her booking book. We're booked up on Tuesday and Wednesday night, but we do have a few tables free on Thursday. We had a last-minute cancellation. How many people in your group? I'm not here to book a table. I'm here for the assistant manager's interview. I'm looking for the job. There's a long, drawn-out silence as the woman stares at me, as if caught up in a frozen shock. For a while no one says a thing, and then the silence is conveniently broken with an uncomfortable cough from the back of the woman's throat. Then I swear she smirks as she studies me. I can see once again she's wrestling with saying something. I know what she's thinking. Of course I know what she's thinking. I'm not exactly stupid. But I say nothing, as her haughty superiority reins me right in, so I feel submissive and even self-effacing. Then she barks quickly, with an authoritative order. I think you might want to clean up for your interview, she says, unable to stop herself from releasing an unfaltering snort, which is clearly a suppressed laugh. Your clothes, they're so wet. You look as if you've dived into the Dormanish River. Mascara has run all over your face. You look like a raccoon, and as far as I know, we don't hire raccoons here at La Bougière. What's this about raccoons, Jeanette? Says a tall young man in his late 20s, who walks towards the reception. He's immaculately turned out. The moment my eyes take him in, I know at once he's the restaurant owner. He has that accomplished, successful look about him that you simply can't buy. It moulds itself to his demeanour like a piece of sculpture. He's wearing a pair of smooth butterscotch-coloured chinos, a floral print shirt done in fawn, with a deep brown stylish trench coat, and a pair of caramel-coloured loafers. His dark brown hair is brushed back neatly in a high fade style, with a chic back, and there is an intentional dark shadow that peppers the chin of his angular jaw, and above his lip. I would say he's got a handsome square face, and deep brown eyes that sparkle with humour. She's talking about me, I say, wiping my eyes. I'm so sorry. I've got mascara running all over my face. My clothes are dreadfully wet. I know I'm a sight for sorry eyes, but I feel I'd better turn up for the interview, regardless. It wouldn't look good if I didn't, I'm afraid. I got caught in the rain against my own better judgment. I thought for once in my life I wouldn't need an umbrella. It seemed I got it all wrong. I believed the weather girl's report. I walked here, you see. Our house isn't far away from here. She's here for the assistant manager's job, Mr. Levine, says the snarky receptionist with a cutting edge to her voice that digs rather deep. I'm so embarrassed. I want the floor to swallow me whole, as the man studies me curiously through amused eyes, his face bursting into a broad grin. You do look like a raccoon, he chuckles, but I'm a sucker for raccoons. Loved them all my life. I've got a soft spot for them. Even rescued a wild one once myself as a kid. I had him for many years. Lovely creature. So you're interested in the job, are you? What is your name? My name is Farron, I say, blushing so bright that I can feel my cheeks burning, they're so hot. Have you had any experience with working in restaurants, Farron? He asks me. I'm surprised he hasn't gestured for me to sit down at a table. Maybe this is his way of giving me the brush off. I so wish that fractious, condescending woman's eyes would stop hovering over me like one of those annoying drones or an irritating fly you seriously would like to swat. I tremble nervously as I open my purse and hand him my CV. Thankfully, he stands there reading through it quickly, shuffling through the pages.
Lots of experience you have, it seems. When can you start?
At this, the girl behind the reception desks, her eyes grow round, as if they're about to pop out of her head with astonishment, like the buttons on a teddy bear's face. She looks like she's going to pass out and have a coronary arrest on the spot. I'm certain she believes Mr. Levine has lost leave of his senses, employing me off the cuff like this, especially given the bedraggled way I look right now. I mean, it's hardly a good first impression, is it? I can't blame her, really, for her cruel, calculating assessment of me. I do look like a sorry sight indeed, and for a brief second I think Mr. Levine has got to be joking. He has only gone and offered me the job. I'm so staggered that for a brief moment I become so unstable, like a rickety camping chair that is going to collapse, as my legs almost crumble beneath me from this stunning proclamation. So I reach out to the reception desk, gripping its wooden edges tightly for support. When I look at Mr. Levine, I can see that he has a serious, composed, earnest expression on his face, that has an inquiring question mark in his look, as if he's waiting for me to accept or decline his offer. In a thrilling heartbeat, I know this is no joke. He's offering me this job! My heart begins to sing with delight, like a happy kettle whistling away on a hob. "But Mr. Levine," says the girl behind the reception desk, who looks less than enamoured about the prospect of being ordered around by the likes of me, "you've still got 30 more people to interview before you make up your mind." "Cancel them," says Mr. Levine, waving his arms decisively. "Phone them. Tell them the job's been taken." "But is that ethical, Mr. Levine? Don't you think you owe them a chance? Isn't that the way to ascertain who has the best qualifications for the job? I mean, if you interview everyone, you'll get a greater understanding as to who is the most suitable assistant manager for you. Just randomly giving anyone off the street a job will always be leaving you wondering if you actually made the right decision."
"Goodness gracious, Jeanette, you sound like a bloody politician. You don't only half spat such complete baloney. The lady I want to hire has walked through our restaurant door a second ago, and whether it's ethical or not, I don't give a toss. I'm sick and tired of political correctness in this world of ours. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't."
I can see he's heartily annoyed with Jeanette, who, on seeing his ruffled expression, quickly attends to her job, and utters in a very professional tone, "Rightio, Mr. Levine, I'm on to it right away," she says in a stiff voice. "I'll let the other hopeful applicants know the assistant manager's job is no longer available."
"Good girl. Get on with it then."
So that's the end of part 1. Part 2 is tomorrow evening. So good night. Until next time.